Not all access begins with money. Some of it begins with a school. Long before private members' clubs, family offices, and invitation-only networks became the modern language of status, there was an earlier system for sorting the future. It looked like education. It sounded like character. It was often described as merit. But what it really produced was proximity to power, to confidence, to the people who would later recognize one another on sight. In 1572, a school was founded on a hill northwest of London. It would go on to educate prime ministers, poets, financiers, and kings. Last year, it opened a campus in New York. Tuition, $75,000. This is not just a story about schools. It is a story about one of the oldest access systems still operating at global scale. The public story is education, academic rigor, leadership, preparation for the world. But the most valuable thing these institutions offer is not only what happens between teacher and student. It is what happens between student and student. A peer group that becomes a reference class, a network formed early enough to feel natural, an environment where future gatekeepers meet before any gate even appears. That is the hidden curriculum. Not simply knowledge, placement. By one major measure, alumni of the 9 original English public schools were found to be 94 times more likely to reach the British elite than graduates of other schools. Not twice as likely, not 10 times, 94. Because what these schools transmit is not just instruction. They transmit social fluency, ease inside institutions, a feeling of belonging inside rooms most people only encounter later, if they encounter them at all. This is why elite schooling matters so much to wealth. It does not merely educate a child, it places a child inside a future. For most of their history, these institutions were rooted. Then something changed. In 1998, Harrow opened a campus in Bangkok. By 2011, Brighton College had established itself in Abu Dhabi. Soon, a model once tied to geography began operating like a network. The curriculum traveled, the crest traveled, the language of tradition traveled, and with it, something even more valuable traveled too: legitimacy. What affluent families in newer wealth centers are often buying is not simply schooling in English. It is entry into an inherited reference system, the right name, the right rituals, the right signal that your child is not just being educated well, but being socialized correctly. New wealth can build towers in a decade. It can build liquidity overnight. What it cannot build quickly is accepted lineage. That takes time, recognition, repetition, or, increasingly, a licensing agreement. So instead of building new legitimacy systems from scratch, rising wealth centers have often imported one that already works. Once this became visible, capital moved in. Private equity saw what many families already understood intuitively. Premium education was durable infrastructure for affluent demand. One major international schools operator was taken private in 2008 at roughly a $400 million valuation when it controlled just 6 schools. Over the following 16 years, it expanded to roughly 80 schools across 33 countries. Final valuation, approximately $14.5 billion. At the premium end, education had become investable as a recurring engine of aspiration, migration, and social reproduction. And around the schools themselves, an entire secondary economy is formed. Admissions consultants, placement advisors, application strategists, education concierges. The index cannot simply be bought. Admissions cannot simply be purchased. And yet money can buy readiness, positioning, narrative management, cultural calibration, the ability to arrive already speaking the language of selection. That is how modern wealth approaches old gates, not always by forcing them open, but by appearing from a distance like it has always belonged there. What the global spread of elite schools reveals is not simply where the best education is. It reveals where capital goes when it begins asking a more delicate question. How do we convert wealth into legitimacy? because the first access system was never really about schooling. It was about pre-authorization, a way of placing the next generation inside the right symbolic architecture before adulthood begins. In every era, wealth looks for the same thing, not just entry, recognition. And some of the most valuable institutions in the world still sell it the old way, under the name of education. This is the Affluence Index, where the psychology of prosperity is decoded for intentional living.